Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the season finale of Sitback with Shaq and Anu. And over the last several weeks, we've had some fantastic guests coming up on the show. We've learned so much. We've dug into so many details. And today is, again, something very similar.
Absolutely. So the conversations have been scintillating, to say the least.
Yep.
And, to kind of cap things off, we have, Mr. Eran Wickramaratne, who will kind of give us more clarity on the ongoing problems Sri Lanka continues to face. And of course, all of the questions that are still left unasked,
Yep.
but which are asked regularly on Facebook and Twitter and, social media. And, in favorite watering holes will be put forward.
That is exactly the show is about. It's sit back, take a sip, ask the question.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have the sips here.
Yeah, we're not allowed to. Because the show is only an hour long.
Yeah,
a few sips can actually take us to a few hours.
Yeah, that's true.
So
anyway, so as usual, we will start off the show with our customary poll. It's a yes or no answer, and clearly, after today's revelations on social media, a question that is on pretty much everyone's mind. So without further ado, here it is. The poll question today is, should MPs give up their parliamentary privileges during these trying times? Yes or no? WhatsApp your answer to our hotline 0751 707072, and at the end of the show, we will reveal where things stand.
Yeah, obviously, in terms of the parliamentary privileges is what we're going to be talking about. So, firstly, Eran, thank you very much for coming on the show. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
And dragging members of parliament out of the parliament these days is a hassle. So
it's also a risk.
It's also a risk to us.
And to the MPs themselves, I have to say.
So, on the parliamentary privileges, of course, we're going to be talking about that, Eran, is today massive information that went viral is the MPs are allowed to actually pump fuel at a lesser price than the normal person. And today we see kilometers long fuel lines, right? Straight up, I'm going to ask you, right? Is that true?
Absolute nonsense.
You've never done it?
Never done it. No truth in it.
Yeah.
I get my petrol basically like everyone else.
Right.
And we pay the usual rate.
Right.
I don't know how on earth that came up. Somebody went and took a picture of that police, whatever station, which I have never been to.
Right.
And what I understood from the police is that generally the police only come to fill their tanks, and there is no price even. There are apparently different levels are given, 30 or 40 or 60 or whatever liters of petrol.
Depending on your rank.
I guess. I'm not very sure of all the details.
Right.
And that's how it is. So it had 121 or something. Somebody took a photograph. And the person who took the photograph should have just asked them, is this the price?
Yeah, so that we have it on your screen now.
That's right, that 121. Is this the price?
Right.
And then the senior officer would have said, definitely this is not the price, right?
Right.
And then he would have explained himself, or if we raised it or whatever.
Right.
So, I mean, it's very irresponsible thing, unnecessary thing, and I don't know why it really happened.
Right.
Because today, parliamentarians are under scrutiny.
Absolutely.
All the time.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes.
And then, when you have pieces like this going, it just throws an unnecessary attention, and this is not the time for it.
Right.
Where we have bigger issues in the country.
Right. Right.
This is a complete spanner in the works, I felt, because after the denial came from official sources, also I felt, the main anavasya prasnayakath just threw another spanner in the works.
Right.
So
obviously, we've got a few things now. The Energy Minister, as you can see on your screen right now, has denied claims that MPs are being given fuel at a subsidized rate. And he's obviously tweeted that, so you can actually see on the screen. But right now, the problem, Eran, is the fact that every time something comes up and a relevant minister tweets, right, it boils up to even bigger issue, because the thing is, there is no smoke without fire situation we have here.
at least that's what we've kind of gotten used to.
Yes. Now, in terms of parliamentary privileges, for MPs allowing to be basically subsidized for fuel, was it ever there?
No, I mean, you bring up an interesting subject, and you know, what does an MP get?
Yes.
Let's look at it like that.
Yes.
Right. If you had told me this earlier, I would have brought my payslip and come. Unfortunately, I didn't know.
Okay.
But,
Okay. Actually,
what I'm saying is approximately, we get a salary of 50,000 rupees
Right.
when you are an MP. You get fuel allowance depending on the district.
Right.
Maybe Colombo is probably 30,000-40,000 for the month, and then maybe if you go very far like Jaffna or Mathura or something, you probably get 50,000 or whatever. And then you get a telephone and communications allowance of
Right.
about another 50,000. And then you get office expenses thing of about 100,000.
Right.
When you add the whole thing together,
Right.
all those things
Yeah.
together, you get 250,000 rupees.
Right.
That's what an MP gets.
Right.
And then, you know, that you used to get, right, a car permit.
Right.
And in the last parliament, this car permit was talked about a lot, and it's about, value was about 10 million rupees, right,
Right.
the car permit.
Right.
Some people said less, some people said more. I won't know because I never sell car permits. So, so if you take the car permit and even you divide it by 5 years, 60 months parliamentary term, the 10 million is 133,000 rupees a month.
Right.
My personal view has always been is don't give car permits,
Right.
just give them a car to use, because I came from the private sector, and in middle management you get a vehicle which you can use.
Right.
An MP needs a vehicle for sure.
Right.
Give him the vehicle that he can be used.
Right.
You know, so it's transparent.
Right.
Part of the problem here is because the lack of transparency, there's a lot that has been built up, you know, and which is absolute nonsense. So when I came into parliament, my salary, right, was 1 day's pay I got as CEO, director of one of Sri Lanka's largest banks.
Right.
1 day's pay.
Right.
Okay, I'm not grumbling at all
Yeah.
because I took a conscious decision and I came for a reason. Right, I'm not grumbling at all. So I said this recently somewhere, and somebody corrected me and said it's actually now half a day's pay. It's not 1 day's pay. It's now half a day's
It's
pay.
worse.
You see? Right, and then the MPs get, right, we get about 4 employees. We get like 2 drivers, and
Right.
we get a secretary, and we get a research officer. And now the salaries of these people, the people we get, are between the ranges of basically 30,000 and 40,000
Right.
each person.
Right.
Right. Now, everybody who, from the driver to the secretaries, right, you can't get quality people for 30 and 40,000 rupees. We have to be honest with ourselves.
Understand.
Completely
I mean,
understandable.
we can't.
Right.
Right. And so some of us who can afford it, if I want a quality person, I mean, I pay more than my 250,000 I get from Parliament.
So you put the extra.
Just goes to pay 2 people.
Right.
Right.
So you get an idea. Just goes to pay 2 people what I get from Parliament,
Right.
because I have to have quality staff if I'm going to actually deliver. So because you raised this issue, I'm going to say something which is very unpopular.
Okay.
I'm thinking nobody's going to vote for me after I say this.
Are
Yeah.
you sure you want to say
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, because I came to politics to actually say the truth.
Right.
So if people decide not to vote for me, I mean, then I'm going home. you
Right.
see, because I came for a purpose.
Right.
So, I looked at this carefully, and I was told that Karu Jayasuriya and Eran Wickramaratne are possibly the only 2 CEOs of a public quoted company in the history of the Sri Lankan Parliament.
Oh, really?
Yes. So you have lawyers, doctors who are self-employed.
Right.
You have businessmen who come
Right.
Yeah.
into politics.
Right.
Right.
Like
But-
most of.
There are quite a few.
Or who become businessmen after.
Yes.
Yes.
And then you have,
Yeah.
so people don't come from the corporate sector.
Right.
Now, all at our cocktail parties, and we go around talking, and we know everything that's wrong with the country, and all this kind of conversation. I was part of that,
Right.
coming from the private sector. And then, of course, one day it dawned on me that this is talk, we need to really change it.
Right.
Now, but I came when I was 50 plus.
Right.
I was 51, I think, when I came in. Right. And so I had, worked through.
Right.
And generally, if you are, in the private sector and you're working and all, first you get married, you have maybe a couple of kids or whatever, and your first thing is like you try to get a house, so you get a bank loan, mortgage, whatever, get a house. I did the same thing. Amma gave the land, and I went and got a bank loan, built my house, right? And then the next thing you do is between 40 and 50, you save money.
Right.
And the reason you save money is you have a kid or 2 kids or whatever, I have 2, and you think they must be educated, so you need some savings, right? And then I come at 50. Now, ideally into the Sri Lankan Parliament, we need to get somebody, in my view, 40 years, educated, have worked and got into middle to senior management, got experience behind them. So they have not just education, but also experience, and they should come in. But that's the period in which they are going to save for their family and for their kids, and their future. And we can't get them, we can't attract them. We can't attract them, That's a real problem. So one day I said this story, and on one side I had the speaker in the government when we were in government, and on the other side I had the president. And then they asked this question, and they were all waiting for answers like, you have so many privileges, give up all your privileges, don't have tea in the canteen, don't eat, and this kind of rubbish people come and talk, which sounds very populist, thing to do, And then they think, I mean, if you don't give them anything, you will continue to keep the crooks and the rogues who see it as a privilege to come and actually make money, wrongfully make it. So I was making this story like I'm making today, and I won't tell you which one of these, or should I tell you? I don't know.
No, you don't
By
have to.
all means, let's hear it.
If there's going to be any chance of being re-elected,
so the person turned to me and said, after I had made this explanation, this was in the Taj Hotel. I think there was a huge marquee or something in the garden, and this was a big thing. And this was after January 8, 2015. And I was making the case to get the right people into Parliament. And I said, you have to remunerate them well so that you attract these professionals. They need to come for 5 years. And I said, let's make a law that they can go back into their professions after 5 years. Some might come and decide to stay on, that's fine. But we have to actually get them here. And therefore, let's look at this positively. And the person just leaned over me and said, Eran, ඔය කතාව කියන්න එපා. මං කිව්වා ඇයි සර්? ඔය කතාව කියන්න එපා ඉරාන්. හිතන්නේ මේ 225ම හොරු කියලා. ඉරාන් ඔය කතාව කිව්වම කියයි මේ හොරුන්ට වැඩියෙන් ගෙවන්න කියනවා කියලා. I was actually told that. But I
think I will know who said it though.
I haven't changed my view. We must make a system and laws not for the crooks and the rogues. We must make it for the good people. So that the good people could come. I am very much on that in the Singapore model. Get the proper people, remunerate them properly. And let them deliver. So after I was given that advice, I changed it. I said, pay and jail. I came up with that after that. Again, once you get them there and they're working, if they do something wrong, the law must apply. That's what I meant by pay and jail. And then they must be cornered with it. So both sides are important for sure. But the right people need to come.
If that was actually the case, half the parliament would be in jail.
And that's if you close the merchant ward.
Exactly.
If anyone ever makes it to jail. But I have to ask this question. Isn't the power a powerful drug and a very attractive drug? Because after all, being in the public limelight is also another impetus, adds impetus to what kind of drives people to seek public office. And I've seen a lot of people who react very, very, very badly to losing that power. It's almost like a drug addict, who's been denied the drugs.
Well, it can. I think it can affect people like that, right? But I think that this is where the rule of law comes in. You see, if the rule of law is there, whether you are outside power or in power, the law needs to work. I keep saying this. There are rogues in parliament and there are rogues on the street.
True.
They're both rogues. So the law must apply. For sure, the law must apply. So if you are really, Anu, talking about like abuse of power, I think abuse of power shouldn't be tolerated at all. I mean, the law must apply. Whether in power or outside power, law must apply. It must apply from the president down. the president is given an indemnity just for the period he is in office.
Right.
After that, the law applies to the president as well.
Does it?
Does. It
No,
does.
that's what we people don't
But,
seem to
but,
understand.
Eran, but not in retrospect.
No, my heavens, it does. You know why?
Right.
Let's put it like this.
Okay.
I'll be extreme.
Right.
The president murders his girlfriend or his wife.
Right.
Right. And he is now still continues as president. For sure. After he is out of the presidency, if the evidence is there that he has murdered his girlfriend or his wife, the law applies.
Right.
There's no escape.
Honestly, I was under the impression that there is this indemnity as long as you live.
In perpetuity.
If you are a president. I mean, if that was the case.
Then you can steal and rob and get away. You know?
Which is happening.
So this gives added credence to as to why certain people are not leaving.
Lots to talk about with Eran Wickramaratne on the show today. And just before we carry on, a couple of interesting stories that actually happened on the show. So we're going to quickly run through them. Some big stories also that actually took place.
And
so
we do have to play that clip about Harsha because
yes,
we have to ask that question.
We are going to. So in the meantime, a couple of big stories that came out. Some, of course, made headlines. Let's have a quick look at it on the screen right now. This, of course, now Prime Minister Eran Wickramaratne is in Parliament, except for essential services. Public sector employees should not report for duty tomorrow due to the fuel crisis. The only thing I don't understand about this is the fact that is it only tomorrow or is it, because we're expected the fuel crisis to supposedly ease by mid-June. So are the public sector to stay home till mid-June?
Well, adequate supplies have been promised over the weekend and, which will ease the situation. I figure that. What do you think, Eran?
I think it's more like what you just mentioned.
Yeah.
I think the Prime Minister must be having the information.
Right.
And tomorrow may be very critical. Maybe there is no. So that's probably the likelihood is that.
Certainly counting on it for the weekend because they were all running on fumes.
Absolutely. We are just absolutely at the last, the end of our tether right now.
Exactly. A couple other stories moving on, of course. Now, this one something, Anu, that you can actually.
Absolutely.
This
Today
is what
I
you call
found
legitimacy.
Yeah. So today I found this where one of my friends had shared, on Facebook. That letters are now being addressed to Gota Gogama officially stamped and the full works. Kadumkar Kandayam Niti Anshe Gota Gogama Golfish Saragala Bhumi Colombica. I never thought that.
When did we even think of something like this? So yeah, clearly it becomes legitimate the moment you obviously have a stamp on it.
Absolutely. So if the postal department has deigned it worthy enough to deliver to this address, it has officially become an official address in the country.
Right. Next story that we have for today, Speaker Mahinda Yapa Abeyewardene informs Parliament today that some MPs had requested him to book a hotel for them to stay if there is no fuel for them to return home. If there was a travel agency, I think, I suppose now the Speaker has decided to start reserving hotels at the moment, hotel rooms.
But, I do actually feel for the situation after what Eran just said, that if you cannot, if you have to access fuel just like everyone else, so, and if you are, MP representing somewhere else, like let's say Mahatara, Jaffna, wherever, you do have to get back home.
For sure.
But how do you do that?
Yeah, but the other things, on that note, Eran, I wanted to also basically ask you, does the legitimacy of the Parliament diminish in any way if you do decide to go virtual? Because the House of Commons did it during the COVID time.
lockdown, yes.
And they had their representatives from all over the UK. So, do you have to physically be in Parliament to, pass the provisions and
enact policy,
and the acts, etc.?
No, as you said, some countries have used digital methods in actually meeting. If it comes to that, we can do that, right? But Parliament is, it's important, I think, to meet and to converse and to try to share ideas because it's not just the debate.
Right.
Often people look at the well of Parliament and the speeches we are making.
Right.
So I think Parliament is a lot more than that. Then we have all the different committees in Parliament.
Right.
Some committees are standing committees, like you have the Committee on Public Finance.
Right.
It decides on finance, but it's Committee on Public Enterprises, state-owned enterprises.
Right.
Committee on Public Accounts, government ministries, departments, so forth. And then you have consultative committees, so ministries, right? And then we had sectoral oversight committees in the last parliament, which were done away with in this parliament. So, so it's ideal if you can meet,
right.
you see, because there's a lot of exchange, also a lot of understanding that, that comes in. So in a democracy, right, a parliament is an essential service.
Okay.
Right. Because like, get an ambulance, right, an ambulance is an essential service. If there's a long petrol queue, the ambulance obviously needs to be getting it. And similarly, there are other essential services, law and order,
right.
health, and food, and then, right. So parliament is a small number of people. Often the issue is exaggerated.
Right.
That's the issue, right? Now, even, I talked about the car permits earlier.
Yeah.
You'll be shocked if I tell you this. We are talking about, 225 car permits, right? Once in 5 years for the MPs.
Right.
And as I said, I'm opposed to the car permit. I think they should be just given a car, like in a company. Right. But do you know that we give about 10,000 car permits a year?
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
To whom?
Good question.
Right. So they have been given generally to government servants, particularly the higher officials in the public service generally. And then there have been a few others who have also been given,
Few taking more than one, I suppose.
Santoshams.
Out
of happiness.
Have one more. One for the road.
True. Because, you always wonder if there are only 225 permits being given, because you see about 10,000 luxury vehicles being, imported into the country about a few years ago, before this whole lockdown happened due to COVID. Then you still wonder, because the last time we checked, I work in advertising in another avatar, and Toyota Lanka was one of my clients. So at the time, the Land Cruiser was 55 million, which is now beyond 100 million Sri Lankan rupees to actually buy it. So I actually asked them, do anyone actually pay the full price and buy? One or two apparently do that too.
Right.
But most of it is on permit.
Of course.
So I said, so permit, how many permits are there? How can you survive? You wouldn't believe. That was their response. You wouldn't believe how many people come here with permits. So
the flip side of that is, I am opposed to the permit because I said the transparency issue. The flip side of that is, right, the public service in Sri Lanka needs to be well remunerated, and we need to basically get the best people in there, right? Not allow political parties to just stuff the public service with people to win elections.
Unfortunately, that is exactly what is happening right now.
That happens, and that's where the problem is. But otherwise, right, if you have an underpaid public service, right, you won't attract the best people. Right. A little anecdotal story.
Sure.
And then I go to England. Originally, I went in England and I played cricket in the leagues after playing here. And then I decided to go to university. I go to university. I graduate from university, do my postgraduate. I come back. And I join a big international bank. Sitback. Okay. And one thing they did is they straight away invested in me. Salary was small, but the investment in training was unbelievable. Unbelievable. And so I go for my first management training program to Singapore. So that you can imagine 20 years later, he'll be in middle to senior management in that country.
Right.
We will be sitting across the table, government and private sector. We'll be speaking the same language. We've understood the same concepts. That's how a country will go. A country will never advance beyond its public sector. Right. So we need a lot to be done in the public sector. So I said that because I can see that that's one area which we lack a lot.
My God, yes.
And we need to really look at transforming it. So one is leaner, better trained, lots of money to be put in training, and then a public sector which runs like the private sector. All private sector people.
Correct.
We have our goals, annual goals, KPIs, right?
Absolutely.
Quarterly reviews, annual reviews. We get promoted, we don't get promoted. We get increases, we don't get increases. We get bonuses, we don't get bonuses. We need to build a culture like that.
Absolutely right. This is something that Anu and I have been actually talking about.
Actually, another thing that I wanted to say was about the public service or the civil service or the bureaucracy, as we call it. So, our parliament, most of our things is in most aspects based on the British Parliament. So is our civil service. So, just like, I mean, I'm sure you watched Yes Prime Minister and Yes Minister, this the classic BBC series, where Paul Eddington, they go at each other with, and there you see how the public service or the civil service puts a spoke in the works. They waylay things as much as possible. And since we are constructed on the same lines, I'm sure that happens here too. So who would you say, in your opinion, is more corrupt? The politicians themselves or the public service?
Good question. Because there is generally an impression, right, that the politician is corrupt, and that's where all this stems from. No, our system is corrupt.
Right.
It's not just the politician. Our system is corrupt. Right? So you ask businessmen, you ask ordinary people, you go to get your plan passed. Just go to the Nagara Sabha.
Yes.
Right? To get your plan passed. Right? And you will struggle with it. You want something else done, you will struggle with it. People at every level, that's local government, if you come to central government, and so forth, right? I was wondering whether to say this or not.
Don't wonder. Just say it.
I was the State Minister of Finance.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And in finance, when you look at the country's revenue, okay, the revenue of the country, about 75% of the total revenue of the country comes from three institutions.
Right.
It's customs,
Right.
it's inland revenue,
Right.
and it's excise. Okay.
Right.
The others, there are all over the country, lot of institutions, and the country's revenue comes. But it's from these three institutions that the country's revenue comes, right? Now, I will leave it to the public to decide, right, whether these institutions are clean or not. Just think about it.
Right.
Inland revenue. Excise department. Customs. Don't have a poll on it.
No. Too many yeses.
Then Mangala Samaravira was minister, I was state minister.
Right.
I didn't hear any accusation that we pocketed any money.
No, there was.
But nobody said that the level of corruption went down even when we were there.
That's true.
Okay. So the reason I'm saying that is, right, there are huge problems. The system is corrupt. In parliament, obviously there are corrupt people. There are corrupt ministers in parliament. On both sides of the aisle there are.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right? And some of these people have been around a long time.
Right.
Right? And because the system doesn't work and they haven't really been taken apart or punished, right, it goes on.
Yeah.
But if you ask me what's the number, I mean, we are 225, right? There may be 25 people, right? There may be, I'll put it like this, 20 on that side and 5 on our side. Right?
Who are corrupt.
Right. Out of 225.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. But then the corruption is much bigger. That's one. And, right, corruption at the official level is huge.
Right.
Huge. And the truth is this, right? Generally, if you look at the parliamentarians, right, now people are wondering how many have O levels, how many have A levels,
True.
how many have degrees.
Yeah.
But the officials, they're all educated at the high level. Otherwise,
Yeah.
they won't be in those positions.
Absolutely. You had to have a tertiary
So,
education.
so when it comes to corruption, the people you have to watch the most are the educated corrupt.
Wow.
Because they are smarter.
Right.
They are smarter. And you have to watch them. You say, being ethical is nothing to do with whether you're educated or not educated.
Correct.
There are very ethical people who don't have a formal education. Very ethical.
True.
Of course.
You
True.
see?
Yeah.
So that is why I'm saying, right, we have it, and the thing is a politician will come 5 years, he gets kicked out. The people have the option of kicking him out or keeping him or whatever. Some, of course, perpetuate themselves. But officials are there for life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And therefore, we have to look into it and we have to really move to actually, it's a systemic corruption, to get rid of it. I am particularly focusing on it at the moment.
I can see that.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the laws in
Right.
particular at the moment, right, of how we are going to minimize.
But the system that we are talking about really now, basically you need to, we constantly have this going on, Anu and myself, is the fact that you can't necessarily try and change the system at the head and expect everybody else to fall in line. It's got to be the other way around. You need to start at the bottom of the cycle, your Grama Niladaris, your provincial councillors, your Pradesha Sabhas, and then obviously they end up being your ministers and your presidents, your prime ministers. So this system change that everybody is talking about most probably will come out, if it does come out, at the time of our kids or grandkids. You can't expect this to turn tomorrow.
But Shaq, what you are saying is still about the political framework.
Yes.
But what about the, like, Eran, we were talking about earlier, about the civil service? Because if you actually create the systems put systems in place that cannot be corrupted, where you're accountable.
Yeah.
So what does this take? Two-thirds majority, referendum, what? Constitutional change.
Yeah, so Shaq, I don't completely agree with what you said.
Right.
I think you need a bottoms up, but I think the top down is absolutely essential.
Right.
Because if you set the example, yes, you're a CEO of a bank, you're a CEO of a company, right? Or senior management of the company. You set the example at the top, I think it has an impact even at the bottom. Because if the people at the bottom of the management structure know that the people at the top are stealing and robbing, then this will happen.
Yes.
Of course.
So you have, what shall I call it, corporate level corruption, right? Wholesale, and you have retail level corruption.
Right.
So, when people come, I'm a member of parliament, I have an open day in my electorate. Actually, today from Parliament, I rushed to Moratua.
Right.
Right. I met everybody, and then I rushed back, coming here.
Right.
Right. So, right. Then people come in and they make these complaints, and they make complaints like, we had to pay 1,500 rupees to the policeman, or something, or we had to pay, 500,000 rupees to the principal to get our child in, and or Nagara Sabhava we had to pay something. They come and tell me these kinds. I call this retail corruption.
Right.
So I have begun to say, අනේ මට ඕවා ගැන නම් කියන්න එපා ඇවිල්ලා. මට වෙලාවක් නැහැ. මොකද ඒවා සුළු දේවල්. ලොකු ඒවා දැක්කොත්, ලොකු ඒවා මිලියන ගණන් බිලියන ගණන් ඒව ඇවිල්ලා මට කියන්න. මට ඒව තමයි දැනගන්න ඕනේ. තව එකක් මම ඔයගොල්ලන්ට කියන්න ඕනේ. එහෙම හොරකම් කරන අය ඉන්නවා නම් සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ඉතින් මම අඳුරනවත් ඇති හොරු.
Of course.
Right. Because Sri Lanka is a small society.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And when people are dishonest, it's often people you have known.
Right.
Right. Who are basically in it. So I think the example has to be set at the top.
Right.
We have to make it work at the top. And if it's clean at the top, I think it will have certainly an impact. I don't disagree with you on this. The values thing, I don't disagree.
Right. Of
course.
At school, we have to basically give the values.
Right.
Right. And people need to know what's right and what's wrong. You know, and if the values are there, certainly it will. That will, you said, will take a generation.
Right.
That will create it. But I think in a short period, right. Now, we have to really clean this out. One thing that's coming out of this Aragale, right, is that people are saying, clean it up. Right. They are saying, Gota go home. They are saying, Rajapaksas go home. Right. They are saying, we want a clean government. They are saying, we don't want corruption. So, this is a big theme that's coming out of it. Absolutely. You see, people are talking on the economy. Of course, we have to be sensitive to all the economic factors. But the good governance things are coming in a big way. Yeah. You see. So, corruption is a problem, right? And we have to bring laws. Now, you take assets and liability declarations.
Yes.
Right? How many have made it public? Just a handful.
Right.
Is it actually 14 or 16 members of parliament?
Right, some small number like that only.
But it is mandatory,
isn't it? A constitutional requirement?
No.
Okay.
Make it a
right.
This is where Sri Lanka gets away.
Right.
So when I'm an MP, I had to give my assets and liability declaration to the Speaker of the House.
Right.
When I'm a minister, I give it to the President.
Right.
So giving it to the President is like President having an undated letter of resignation from me.
Right.
Do you follow what I'm saying? He has it. So why isn't it all given to the Speaker? One.
Right.
Okay. Secondly, there's a secrecy clause. Now, if you want to get mine, Shaq, you can write to the parliament and request it. Then they'll tell you pay 750 rupees or whatever, and they will give it to you. But you can't publish it. That's only for you because of the secrecy clause. Correct. So one of the amendments we need to bring in is that it should be basically remove the secrecy clause. Now, for private citizens, they have privacy. That's granted.
Correct.
But if we are coming into public life, then we have to make that sacrifice and say we have to make it known. Right? And so that is. So now I saw some people, when this Aragalaya happened, they quickly held boards, you know, you can audit me, you can audit me. Audit karan statement එකක් තියෙන්න එපා නේ ඉස්සලා.
Yeah, audit what?
Audit what?
Yeah,
Exactly what I'm asking. But they haven't only, as Anu said, only 14 or 15 or something I made it.
So and this is known, you know, it is known and people continue to vote. But didn't the Right to Information Act kind of address this?
No. This law still prevails, right?
The secrecy clause.
And so we'll bring in an amendment, right? I'm hoping to bring an amendment. It's already worked on, to say that remove the secrecy clause, everybody is. And I want to say something else. Don't think people who came there 20, 30 years ago are going to get away. We don't want to see you last year's one only. We want to see you one from 20 years ago.
If it's available. The statement.
That might take some doing, but you know, thank heavens.
Yes.
This is exactly what we wanted. The other thing was, you know, moving away from, you know, this, basically all the kind of block, you know, roadblocks as to where we want to go. Also want to say now the Aragalaya has asked for 225 plus 1 to get out. You included, unfortunately. And at the same time, so people have now a tendency to see politicians and public officials as the enemy. What are you going to do about this? Because things have to turn around to get back into public office.
Yeah, so you said that they want the 225 to go, including you, regretfully.
Yeah.
It's not regretfully. Because I'm only going to be there, right, if people want me.
Correct.
There are no regrets.
Yeah. Right.
You see? So I will make one distinction here. You see, we have to be careful in what we are saying.
Of course.
Right? And within, I mean, if you have 10 people, you know, in the Aragalaya, 9 people out of those 10 are actually genuinely wanting to see a change.
Of course.
They are really come out there, they are toiling, they are holding the boards, they are giving their voice cuts, they are making their message known, they are peaceful demonstrators. But that one person is there who has infiltrated the place.
Right.
Right? And they are with a different agenda, you see. And the distinction I draw is this. The problem is not with Parliament, right? That one person I talked out to the 10 wants to burn down Parliament. That's not the answer.
Right.
The 9 want to change the people in Parliament, and we need to know this distinction. I'm all for changing the people in Parliament, right? Because you need to send suitable people to Parliament, right? But burning down Parliament, right, is a different story, and we need to be fully aware of it. We are not going into somebody's dictatorship here.
Right.
Absolutely.
Democracy must prevail.
Right.
It has its drawbacks, for sure.
Right.
And the system can be improved, for sure.
Right.
And we must do it. So we must send the right people in there. So I tell everybody, right, who is out there, lots of young people, professionals, academics, you know, others out there, some of you need to come to Parliament. Join the political parties and come. Form new political parties and come. Please come, because we all want to see the change. You know, that's what I said, no regrets at all.
Absolutely.
You know, people must decide who should be there, who shouldn't be there.
But I must point out little something. I must disagree with you on one aspect of it. 9 plus 1 at the Aragalaya you said. But the thing is, even the 9 plus 1 have been part of this systemic corruption, because you have paid bribes. You have done, you know, underhand things to get things done. Have you declared your assets? Do you pay taxes? These are the questions that you can ask. And have you not, time after time, elected people you knew was of a failed moral compass into Parliament? And then suddenly when things, you know, something comes and bites you in the ass, you turn around and say, oh, wait a minute, you are at fault. Is this also not true?
I'm glad that you said it, Anu, rather than me.
Yeah, you can't say it.
You know what I mean? Because I can't say it.
Yeah.
Right? But I think it's a lot of things for us to really think
Absolutely.
about.
Look inward as well as outward.
Yes, a lot of things to really think about.
You know, so yesterday, just before we have just finished up a fantastic show with Dr. Harsha, we at the end of the show, we do this as to who's coming up as the show the following day, and your picture popped up. And it was a great show. And we're going to play that clip for you as to exactly what he wanted us to ask you about. So we'll find that out right now. So we'll have that on the screen right about now. Tomorrow, we have a good friend of yours who's going to be on the show. Eran Wickramaratne is going to be on the show tomorrow, and we certainly need to find out on how he decided to basically step down from a CEO role and get into politics, and how is he surviving?
No, that's not the question. The question is, now, is he the fastest 100 meters runner in Parliament?
That's a very important question.
Very important question.
In this surround.
And did he get into the wrong vehicle?
That's another important question.
So this is what he wanted us to ask you. Are you the fastest runner in the Parliament?
Yeah. So I was actually a sportsman in school.
Right.
Right. So played cricket, captain hockey. I was also head prefect. I don't mention the school, but I'll just tell you one of Sri Lanka's biggest school.
Of course.
Somebody asked me, why am I not mentioning the school?
Yeah.
I said I used to very proudly mention it because I was head prefect of it as well. And then I said, then I came to Parliament. And then I found after a while...
Almost everybody's from that school.
No, that's not the reason. I came to Parliament and then found out that some of Sri Lanka's biggest rogues also went there. I was so proud of this school. So I thought, don't mention the school.
Yeah. But rather the gym.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, I mean, I won't blame the school for it, right? But so I did that, and then I played sports, and then I played for Sri Lanka schools, and I went to England and I played in the thing, and I have generally been in that side. So I tell Harsha and all the other parliamentarians, shall we say about the age of 40?
Okay.
Right.
I challenge them to a race. Right. I'm much older, but I challenge them to a race.
Talk us through that day, Eran. Now, you and the opposition leader basically heard about the situation that was actually happening at the Golf-Face. Where were you? What prompted you to actually make that call? Because it was an unruly mob, and clearly, I mean, there was a lot going on at that point.
Yeah, so when this Aragale happened, right, we recognized that there was a civil society protest.
Right.
We, as a political party, had our protest, right? We, as a political party, were the first to go to the presidential secretariat. We brought thousands and thousands of people, right? 1,050 people just came with me when we first did that. But then the civil society took over. They camped out there, and that was going. So as a mark of respect to civil society, we decided that we shouldn't be going there. Let them do their thing, we'll do our thing. That was a decision we made.
Right.
So on that 9th of May, we were having our group meeting. We discussed, everything that was happening, and this whole discussion was about us going into government and, all that discussion. And then we finished a little after 1 o'clock.
Right.
I looked at my time, it was 1:15. I came out of the office of the leader of the opposition, and when I came out, I looked, I had 2 o'clock, I had another meeting, discuss the economy with the leader of the opposition and some of the others like Harsha and Kabir and all that.
Right.
So I have 45 minutes to go and come. I said, I step out and have a little bit of lunch and come. Then I saw the leader of the opposition get in his vehicle. So I moved past it and I asked the people standing there, where is he going? Well, he's going to the Golf-Face Green, right? And then I was like, why? Then I said, who is he going with? And then they said, nobody is going with him, he's going.
Right.
Then I thought, that's not proper because he's the leader. Now, somebody should be going with him. So I quickly went outside the gate. I was looking for my car, and then in a van, Kavinda Jayawardena, the member of parliament, was in a van, and he had some media people, and he said, Ayya, get into this vehicle with me. So I got into his vehicle. And then the leader of the opposition went, and then I went. So I didn't really know any of the background, apart from knowing he was going there, and I felt that somebody needs to be with him.
So you did not know this unruly mob was actually going on?
No, we knew that. Because we knew that, we knew that, right? We knew that because the reason he decided to go was because we were told that the peaceful demonstrators were being attacked.
Right.
And then we felt, even though we hadn't been there previously, the time had come that we should go and stand there to make the case that you can't attack anybody.
Right.
This is a peaceful protest.
Right.
So that was the reason.
Right.
We got to the Kalpiti junction, and then there were people with these big poles and all trying to whack our vehicles. We got past that. We got to Temple Trees. Again, there was a crowd. We got past that. We got near the Golf Face Hotel. Again, we got past that. We went, and then he was in front. He got off his vehicle. He started to walk. So I quickly jumped out of this vehicle, and I ran up, and I started to walk with him.
Right.
And then what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people, their tempers were flying high.
Yeah.
They'd just been attacked. It's understandable. But, it doesn't hurt that you're fit. I always knew that sports would come in handy, for all of us. So you...
Some said, oh, you shouldn't have gone there. But there were very mature politicians, right, who told me, you did the right thing. You stood with them at the right moment. Of course, when the bottles came was okay. When the poles came, I quickly hid and I ducked and all that. So I told them that otherwise, May 10th, they would have been attending my funeral.
Yeah.
If you really got one of those shots.
That's
actually,
going.
Yeah. But of course, අපි සිංහලෙන් කියනවනේ ගුටි කණ්ඩ හරි ඉන්න යාළුවා තමයි හරි යාළුවා කියලා. So,
So well done, Eran.
well done.
That's what he's trying to say. But okay, something that I don't think any one of us actually know, if you can let us know at this point, is from that point onwards, we saw the opposition leader getting into the vehicle and of course going away from that. We saw you leaving the place. What happened from there? Where did you guys go? What transpired within the opposition at that point?
Yeah, just getting out, so I ran back. The first vehicle I saw, I tried to open it. It didn't open for some reason. I ran to the next vehicle, and then I recognized that it was that van that I came in.
Right.
I just got into that, and there's a huge rush there.
Yes,
everybody
of course.
got in and
Right.
all. And then, I don't know, they put it through one of the many buildings that are coming up now, through some construction site.
Yep.
We got on the other side, there were more people with poles. And then some security guy told me, Eran, can you please get to the back, you say. So I got to the back. I guess they want to make sure that I was not seen or whatever.
Right.
With these people everywhere. They were behind, they were on the other roads, all over the place.
Right.
They were with these poles and all waiting. And anyway, somehow they managed to get out of it, and I came, and then I saw near Slave Island,
Right.
some were attacking some buses and things, you see.
Yeah.
And then I got away. And the leader of the opposition, I think, went into the hotel there,
Right.
And he was held up there for a while, and then he was taken out from there.
Right. So obviously, in terms of what's going on in the country right now, the opposition did actually make a claim to create an interim government. Sadly, that didn't come across, that didn't work out.
An interim all-party government.
Interim all-party government, and of course, the Prime Minister, Eran Wickramaratne, has decided to take on that. What is the workings in the SJP at the moment? Because we hear there are individuals who want to step out, there are individuals who want to basically sit independent.
You mean Harin?
Harin, yes, of course,
yes.
right? Harin was on the show with us, and I think Harin was one of our first guests on the show, and even at that point, Eran, he said that we should take it on. He was saying this is a challenge that we should take it on, and so whatever the internal issues are going on right now. But Harin's written a letter to the Prime Minister requesting certain answers, and I don't know, according to the media, it says if the answers are suitable enough, he will actually accept a ministerial post. SJP has gone on record and saying, no, we are not going to accept a ministerial post. So what's happening here?
Yeah, so I think we need to understand it. Everybody is focused on the economic crisis.
Yes.
Naturally, you see the queues on the road, the gas is not there, electricity is being cut, our children's education is getting affected, sometimes essential medicines are not there, food is not there, and these are real issues.
Right.
But when you're trying to solve any issue, you have to go to the root cause of
Right.
it. Right? In Sri Lanka's crisis is unprecedented.
Right.
Even in our own history, it's unprecedented.
For sure.
Yeah.
You compare our crisis with the rest of Asia. We are the only country in this total mess.
Right.
In the whole of Asia. In 2019, when we handed government, right, we handed government with a foreign reserve of $7.6 billion. $7.6 billion. Then somebody told me the other day, but about 5 billion of that you had borrowed. I said, what's the problem? I borrow it, and if I put it in a deposit, it's still a reserve.
Right.
You see, I said, you need to understand this properly. So we gave them $7.6 billion. So what did they do? They ran it to zero. Then we are a bankrupt country, and today officially bankrupt. We were not able to basically service the debt. So now if you take it in the same 2-year period, Bangladesh's reserves have gone up by 41%.
Right.
The other two big countries are India and Pakistan in the region. Their reserves have also gone up in the same period more than 30%. Then you have all the other countries apart from Afghanistan, which I don't want to compare with Afghanistan.
Right.
Apart from Afghanistan, every country's reserves have gone up. Right? Our income, revenue collapsed. It collapsed. It's unbelievable. Because in 2015, we came in and we had a program with the agreement of the IMF, and we went for fiscal consolidation. The revenues went up from 11% of GDP to 13.5%. Taxpayers went up from 1.1 million to 1.7 million. These are good signs of a country. Everything got reversed. So wrong policy, mismanagement.
Right.
That is the cause of the economic thing. So the primary thing, and I keep explaining this, Sri Lanka's primary problem is not the economy. It's a governance problem.
Right.
Unless you sort the governance problem, you can't sort the economy. Right? You have a company. Right? You have a CEO. He's an absolute mess. Maybe he's a drunkard, drug addict, I don't know, whatever. Right? He's a mess. Right? You are saying the company is doing badly. It may be the bank. Right? What's the first thing the board of directors will do? They will say we need a change of leadership at the top. We need to put somebody who understands at the top. So we have a governance issue. What are people on the street saying? Gota go home, Rajapaksas go home, form a government without the Rajapaksas. This is the cry in the country. So that needs to be addressed. We saw the president. We spent more than 2 hours with him. I explained this in detail to him. And he said, well, what are you saying, that I should be gone in 2 weeks? I said, we can talk about a timetable. But we have to have agreement that there's going to be a change, right? And tackle the governance problem. So if we tackle the governance problem, then you have an acceptable, the markets will accept, the international markets will accept, the IMF will accept, the World Bank, the multilaterals will accept, the local population will accept. Now, Shaq, you have a business. You go to the bank. You want some money. Right? Before they look at your project proposal, they look at your face.
Right.
And they want to check, who are we dealing with?
Right.
What's this guy's track record? Has he borrowed money in other places and not paid?
Right.
They first establish that.
Right.
Then only they go to the project. The country is the same. They first establish that and go to the project. So we have to sort the governance problem. So when Sajid Premadasa was given the offer to become Prime Minister, Sajid Premadasa said, I'll consult my team. So he talked with us. We said, fine, we will take it. We think we can really, very, very difficult, but we probably have the best chance of easing the burden. And we will take it. But we will tell the president, right, basically he has to go.
Right.
Right? Then they said, but how? I said, dignified way. We bring the 21st Amendment. We abolish the executive presidency.
Yeah. Right.
So it's not about him, it's about the systems change.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then he goes, then what about the timetable? That's something we can talk. So when he said, I expect me to go immediately, he said, we can talk about it. Then the Bar Association had brought in a proposal and they talked about 15 months or whatever.
Correct.
And he said that was reasonable, the 15 months. And then I said, no, we have to look at a much shorter period, right? To make the change.
15 months is almost at the end of
Almost
the
his
year.
entire term.
So I said that's not possible.
Yeah.
Then they appointed one person from that side and they appointed me from the opposition. to continue the discussion. The next day, I continued the discussion. I sent things in writing as well, right? But then meanwhile, we heard that, you know, they had decided to go for a prime minister who didn't have any conditions like us, right? So they went for that prime minister, and that's where we are at the moment, and they're struggling to form a government which is going to be acceptable to everybody.
Eran, the question is this. Now, if Mr. Ranil Wickramaratne didn't accept the position, what would have happened? Because Sajid didn't accept it. Obviously, there was talks that the president was talking to Sarath Fonseca, who obviously had said no from the start. And then Ranil Wickramaratne, hypothetically, if he had also said no, then what would have happened?
We would have had a government with a clear plan, the 21st Amendment in Parliament, President leaving with an agreed time period, we would have been in office, and we would have been negotiating with the international community.
Yeah, but you needed a prime minister at that point.
Sajid Premadasa would have got sworn in as prime minister. They have no option.
Tied, you know?
They have no option. They would have had it. I mean, look at this. For the essential items, that is for the gas, for the petrol and diesel and kerosene, so that the electricity, the coal, right, the basic essentials, the medicines, you need for a month approximately $635 million.
Right.
Out of that, $500 million is just petroleum. We have to either get the cash or we have to get suppliers' credits. Where can we get the suppliers' credits from? We have to get it from several countries, including the countries in the Middle East.
Right.
Do you think that we can go there with a Rajapaksa at the helm of the government and tell those people, you know, we need a supplier's credit? What nonsense are we talking? This government is discredited. During the COVID, right, crisis, right, when patients died of COVID, they didn't allow burials. There was no scientific basis for that.
Right.
The World Health Organization said, WHO said, there is no scientific basis. Right? That is the credibility that the government lost by doing things like this. That is why I'm saying, first we had to have a governance shift, right, and the economic issue. I might go one step further and say this. We are still willing to stick our necks out because we don't want people on the streets. I have seen young mothers, right? Every young mother can't breastfeed their child. They want milk powder, right, to supplement the breastfeeding. They are really, really suffering. There's so much anxiety among young couples and young families in particular. The older people can handle it more, but the young people are finding there's so much depression that's going on, right? We are only talking in economic terms, but in non-economic terms, the suffering is unbelievable. Absolutely. So we have a responsibility to change it. We are still willing to do it. We are still willing to come into government and to get the country out of it. We form an all-party government. But the people who created the problem must take the first step and basically take a step back. The people who created the problem, so that then we will have the freedom to do it. You know, where you have a president, right, who is overwhelmingly elected, 2/3 of parliament, right, brings a 20th amendment, gets more power, has his own cabinet from his own party, undermines parliament, undermines his own cabinet, gets into a mess, and then if they are saying that they don't want to make any changes, blaming the opposition, blaming us for it, what are they doing? Now they are talking about bringing a 21st amendment, which is not our one. Our one is very clear. I am telling you, what are they going to do? The 20th amendment was brought to give dual citizens the right to hold public office. I want to know whether they are going to amend it. I want to know that. I'm all for Sri Lankans all over the world. I want Sri Lankans living overseas to come. They don't need visas. They should be allowed to come. They should be allowed to do their businesses here. They have their families, their schoolboy networks, professional networks, everything. We want them back. We not only want them back, we want their children who are born in those countries back. Because they have networks in those countries for businesses, for professions which they can bring here. We love them and we want them to come. This country is open. But when it comes to governance, isn't it fair to give it to people who are really living here and to make those decisions on governance day to day in this country? What will they do? They are trying to pull the wool over our eyes. They will bring this, but they won't even get rid of that. Why? Because they want to protect another family member, Basil Rajapaksa. Right? So that is why I say, right, open our eyes. We want to change this. I'm calling on the president even tomorrow. Make the change. Right? And let's get this country out of the mess it is. We are willing.
So the change that you want is basically you want him to go.
Yes, because how can we take a government, right, which is acceptable to everybody with them remaining?
Are you still willing to basically create a government or create a cabinet under the current prime minister if the president goes?
If the president goes, we are open to every discussion. If the president goes, because we want an all-party. All party. We are open to discuss it.
President can remain if 19A comes back as, because then he becomes a nominal president anyway.
Yeah, we will not move from the principle. But come on, we are pragmatic. Right? We've been in businesses. I started a bank. I was the first CEO of a bank. There are pragmatic decisions that have to be taken. We are pragmatic. We need everybody.
Eran, don't you think maybe the way to go about, if you're looking at a corporate structure, do you think a way to go about is get on the board first and then get the rest of the board directors to vote with you, or rather than sitting outside the boardroom and trying to actually scream the door down?
No, you can't hear, because the power is with the president. This is an executive president. Yeah. Right? And parliament is there, but this is an executive president. The power is here there. That is why we are saying change the system. We don't want that. We want a system where there's a cabinet and the prime minister is first among equals.
Absolutely. And responsible to parliament.
And responsible to parliament. Yeah. So that is what we want, and that's what we want to create. So there are other proposals that are coming, and I'm telling all those MPs as well and former ministers, right? And most of them that have to be put back are going to be from that same lot, right? Please don't wait, because this situation is worsening. You see, even if we come there, we are not going to get the acceptance unless there is a systemic change in governance. Then there will be acceptance. And we are willing tomorrow to get on flights, go where it is necessary, do the particular negotiations, right? So we need to do a few things. One is we need to get into an agreement with the IMF. Secondly is we need to do our debt restructuring. Thirdly, we need to get this bridging finance to ease the burden on the streets. Fourthly, we need to make sure, while we move the reforms, the poor and the low-income people, the vulnerable, are protected, right? And therefore, we have to do social protection. We talked with many people. The World Bank has already given some money, right? And we need to make sure that those direct transfers go to those people. They need to be protected, because otherwise they will not be able to bear the reforms that are needed.
Correct.
We need to capitalize our banks, because we can't take any risk with our banking system. We can't let the economic crisis become a banking crisis. So we have thought through the process and what to do. But power is not with us. Power is somewhere else.
The president is not going. It's not working. What is your next option?
The Aragale will continue.
And people will continue to suffer.
The Prime Minister said the same thing. And there was a change. Mr. President, don't go that way. Go in a dignified way.
Interesting.
And I have to ask this though, okay. You come in, President does leave, 21st Amendment comes the way you want, which actually, nullifies the President's powers. But won't all of you end up being the bad guys?
Of course, we are taking a huge risk.
Yeah.
But then, right, this is a crisis.
Yeah,
we can't look at our personal political futures in this situation. We have to look at the country in this situation. And we have to do the best we can. Then at the end of that, we may succeed, or if we don't succeed, well, there will be new people who will come forward and take the country forward.
Absolutely.
If we succeed, people will say, we want to see more reforms, more things done, so that the country could be taken to a higher plane. There is a risk, and we are willing to take that risk. But but we need to be very clear, right, that on what basis that we can actually enter and do this.
Do you think the president is actually sitting comfortable at the moment because Mr. Wickramaratne is the prime minister right now?
Of course, for him to invite Mr. Wickramasinghe, he would have been obviously comfortable.
It's like a saving grace for him that he can actually extend his term? I mean, as in go his full term?
I don't know about the full term, but that he's comfortable with it.
Right.
You see, that's why he invited Mr. Wickramasinghe to be Prime Minister. But Mr. Wickramasinghe obviously has experience, but faces alone won't do. Some of these systemic changes have to happen if you have to move forward.
Now, obviously, we spoke about this last night with Harsha at the same time, and Ranil Wickramasinghe, the Prime Minister, is the Prime Minister, but he is the Prime Minister of a party that he has always opposed over the longest period, like arch enemies. And how is it possible? I mean, did he ever think that he could actually get them to fall in line with his thinking process?
Or was he counting on you all?
I think he was.
I don't know, maybe both, right? But the fact that he will get them to fall in line, I think is obviously a problem. That's a reason that we are not there now.
Of course.
Because we have made that judgment.
Right.
And if you saw, in the first day he arrived in Parliament as Prime Minister, right? Before that, we had made a decision that we were putting Imtiaz Bakir Maka as our Deputy Speaker.
Right.
Then he, after he was sworn in, made a statement saying that it might be good to put a woman as the Deputy Speaker. So we debate it, right? I was not completely convinced about actually removing Imtiaz Bakir Maka, who we had already decided on.
Right.
But the consensus was, okay, the Prime Minister is saying that, why don't we put a woman there? So Imtiaz, of course, being the gentleman he is, he had no problem with it. And then we go and we put the speaker, right? And suddenly we nominate the person in Parliament, and people from the Pohottua, those who are with the Rajapaksas, get up and they make a statement saying they're nominating somebody else, and not a woman, a male. So if they nominate a woman, I mean, I can even understand it, because the Prime Minister said put a woman. Then if they nominate a woman, we would have come to some agreement and one would step down, or we would have said, okay, then why don't we have an election between the two ladies, and whoever gets the higher vote, we'll take the person. So that was a clear message to the Prime Minister that day, in his first official act in Parliament, right? That the Rajapaksas are in control of that side. There's no question about it.
Right, okay, so we're almost at the end of the show, and as always, digging deep as to exactly what is going on right now. Where does your party stand right now, Eran? We see the opposition minister, making statements in the Parliament. We see most of you making statements in the Parliament. We see those statements being countered from the opposite side in the Parliament. We see all this, okay? Unlike before, now the public is far more interested as to what is happening in the Parliament. Yes. And thanks to social media, you can't get away from whatever you said. You can't deny it anymore either. Where does your party stand? Because right now, are you playing politics over people? Or are you standing by your policies saying, okay, we will do it as long as you guys come according to our conditions?
Yeah, so I hear this thing, are you playing politics? I mean, I hear that comment.
Right.
Right. And it's very easy
to say it.
It's very easy to pass judgment over other people.
Right.
When other person says something, always question his motives or this or that or the other. It's quite easy. And I try to refrain from that. I try to understand what are people actually saying.
Right.
Right. We certainly have taken this stand, right, that we will come in and we'll work hard to try to see if we can change the situation. But, right, we have to be in control, because we can't have the same people who created the problem actually in control and us trying to do that. So from that principle, we will not move. And I would say this, right, to those who are out there who are listening, young people, professional, academics, some of you need to come in.
Right.
You see, to change the system.
Of course.
You have 225. You need a critical number of people. It doesn't matter which political party you represent, but a critical number of people who think similarly, not the same, similarly, have the same set of values and really want to see some changes done. They need to come in, right? Now, instead of that, what we are often doing, people like myself, we are putting this thing into our children's head that things are not stable here. You have a better future in Australia, in Canada, in Europe, or some other place. And we are putting this into their head. And basically the passport queues are growing, right? And people are going that direction. But this is not just about careers and economics. Life is a lot more than that. Careers and economics, right, is a part of it, but that's not life. You know what's happening? This is a very sad story I'm telling you. Then you get a phone call one day, and one of your siblings are online and says, Amma died. Which flight can you take? We'll hold the funeral back till you come. I have seen this for quite some time. This is the Sri Lanka that we must change. I'm in politics for it. This is the Sri Lanka that we must change. I studied here, I studied in England, I spent several years there. And then this whole thing about, shall we stay, shall we come back, right? And I met my girlfriend there, who is still my girlfriend, right? Right? And then I had to say this before I got married. I told her, there's one thing you need to know. I'm going back home. She asked me why. I said, my mother has brainwashed me. My mother said to at that time 3 boys, and it was later 3 boys and a girl, my sister who came later. My mother said, go and study abroad. It's good. It widens your perspective. You learn a lot. You become more internationalized, not just very narrowly focused, right? Even if you work for a while and get some experience, that's good, useful. But to Sri Lanka, you shall return.
Right.
She said that. And we asked her why. She said, you were not born here by accident. You were born here to a family.
Right.
Right? Life is about families. It's not about just, which car I drive and how many houses I have. It's about families, right? It's about societies. You were born here. One day, my mother looked annoyed. She looked at me and she said this to me. She said, right, if this place is perfect, Eran, you're not needed here.
Interesting.
And that got me thinking. If this place is perfect, she told me, you're not needed here. So life is about purpose, right? And I'm in politics because I feel that our generation failed.
Right.
But the next generation, the generation who actually led these protests, they can change this country. And therefore, they need to get together, right? And they need to really take this beyond the protest. And we need to go into the systemic changes. Some of them need to come into the political process. Everybody is not called into the political process.
True.
Some of them may be from outside. They can advise, right? They can play a role in the different sectors they will be.
Right.
But some need to come into it. That's how we are going to change this country.
Lovely.
One final question before I
Go
go.
for it.
About the SJB, is your constitution, the party constitution, as strong as the UNP constitution? Because that's stronger than the Sri Lankan constitution when it comes to the leadership.
It's a very good question,
Yeah.
right? We came out of the United National Party because we wanted the constitution democratized,
Absolutely,
right? And in the SJB, I might say this, the constitution, we have more work to be done.
Right.
But I might say this because you asked the question about Sajid Premadasa, right? Sajid Premadas's culture is very different. There's a lot of talk, a lot of consultation, a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions. And sometimes it's got to the point that some people feel like, why are we having so many meetings? And one day he said something like, well, if you don't want them, I can make the decisions. Right?
Yes, yes.
But what he meant by that is, no, we want to
Of
consult,
course, yeah.
and we need to. But the question you raise is an important one. One feature of South Asian politics,
Yes.
South Asian parties, right, is that it's built around an individual.
Absolutely.
Right, and not democratized.
Yeah.
We must change that.
Absolutely.
Wowie. So, I mean, we can actually carry on talking till
No, but I'm sure Eran has had a long day.
Yeah,
Parliament,
I know,
then the
I know.
the constituents meeting with them, and here, so it's already beyond an hour.
That's right. So, just before we go, I think it's time for us to pop up the poll that we actually started off
look
with.
at the answers.
And the question, of course,
should MPs give up their parliamentary privileges during these trying times? Yes or no? Of course, after having spoken to Iran, maybe you shouldn't.
I think we should give you a bit more.
Yeah, they're little enough as they are. WhatsApp your answer to 0751707072. That was it. So here's your answer.
This actually, I mean, the reason for this poll for viewers joining in late is the fact that there was a viral piece of information all over today that the Parliament MPs are getting subsidized fuel at 121 rupees, and we've got it from the good source who's sitting right next to us. It's absolutely rubbish.
Absolute hogwash.
And the parliamentarians have never done that, and it's not allowed, or it's never been done.
Yeah.
And it's not there to be done.
So
and,
let's look at how the answers fall.
Yes or no?
84% say MPs should give up their parliamentary privileges during these trying times.
Yeah.
Well, now you know more. Now you know a little more about the privileges and how little they are already. So, yeah. Well, anyway, this is the perception out there.
That's
like
right.
I said,
Correct.
people do look at people in public office as the enemy right now. So, it's going to take some time and some real tremendous actions to kind of reverse this mindset.
Correct.
Thank you so much, Eran, for being a part of the show.
Thank you
It was
for
an
inviting me.
absolute pleasure.
Thank you,
And
Eran.
as always, clearly learned a lot from what is going on. And because we, unlike the members of parliament, we don't see exactly what is going on. As in, we see, but we are shown what we should see, is what I'm trying to say.
Of course.
And so much going on. But just before we say goodnight to our viewers, in terms of the rest of the members of parliament, do you guys actually fight with each other, or is it just for the show?
This is just an aside, is it?
I don't know about fight. I debate with everyone.
Some people do debate with chairs, though.
Yeah, occasionally, people lose their temper, and you see some incident. But it's very occasional.
It's just the passion that really is coming up.
But in middle school, we have preemptive.
On that note, thank you very much. Today, of course, is the final show of the season with Sitback with Shaq and Anu. There's lots obviously happening. And hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll be back. We're in
That's correct.
bigger place.
Here's hoping for more LP gas, petrol, diesel, and kerosene.
Thank you so much, guys, for watching.
Bye-bye.
And we shall be back on PodHub Facebook page very, very soon. Till then, have yourself a good night.
Thank you.